The emergency klaxons echoed through the corridors of Earth Station Alpha as Admiral Torres rushed toward the command center. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Coalition, and already they faced their first real test. The Drak Empire had launched a massive assault on Haven 7, a peaceful farming colony that supplied food to half the outer rim territories. Torres entered the bustling command room where dozens of human and alien officers worked side by side. The large holographic display showed the current battle situation near Haven 7. Red dots representing Drak warships outnumbered the Blue Coalition forces 3-1. The crystalline Vortani Admiral Krell stood beside the tactical table, his translucent body shimmering with what humans had learned indicated deep concern. "Admiral Torres," Krell's voice resonated through his translation device, "your human fleet must depart immediately. The Drak advance force has broken through our outer defenses. Haven 7 will fall within 72 hours without immediate reinforcement." Torres studied the battle display with growing alarm. The Drak Empire had been the Coalition's primary enemy for over 2 centuries. These savage reptilian warriors showed no mercy to civilian populations and took no prisoners. Every world they conquered became a slave camp or was stripped bare of resources before being abandoned. "How many ships can we commit?" Torres asked his aide, Commander Hayes. 43 vessels, sir. "The entire Third Fleet plus supporting cruisers from the Home Guard," Hayes replied, consulting her datapad. "Captain Reeves has already prepared the Endurance for immediate departure." Admiral Krell's crystalline features brightened, literally glowing with relief. "Excellent. The Threx Hive ships will provide heavy bombardment support, while the Nereid deep strike teams handle underwater installations. Your human vessels will lead the primary assault against the Drak battle line." Torres nodded without hesitation. Since joining the Coalition, humanity had proven themselves as fearless warriors. The alien species all possessed their own military strengths, but none matched human adaptability and courage under fire. The Vortani excelled at energy weapons and shield technology. The insectoid Threx operated like a perfect hive mind, coordinating massive fleets with supernatural precision. The aquatic Nereids could fight in any liquid environment and possessed advanced stealth capabilities, but humans brought something unique to Coalition warfare. They could think independently while still following orders. They adapted to new situations faster than any other species. Most importantly, they never abandoned their allies, no matter how desperate the situation became. "We will not let Haven 7 fall," Torres declared. "Humanity stands with the Coalition." The next 18 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Human shipyards worked around the clock loading supplies and ammunition. Families said goodbye to their loved ones serving in the fleet. News broadcasts showed images of Haven 7's terrified colonists evacuating to underground shelters as Drak scout ships began probing the system's outer defenses. Captain Reeves walked through the corridors of his flagship, the UHS Endurance, as his crew made final preparations for hyperspace jump. The ship represented humanity's most advanced military technology. Equipped with fusion missiles, plasma cannons, and experimental shield generators reverse-engineered from Vortani designs. "Status report," Reeves requested from his first officer. "Commander Morgan, all systems green, sir. The fleet reports ready for immediate departure." "Admiral Torres has confirmed our mission parameters," Morgan replied. "We jump to Haven 7 in formation with the Coalition Task Force. Human vessels will engage the Drak main battle group, while our allies provide support and protect the evacuation transports." Reeves felt a surge of pride in his species and their new galactic family. Humanity had dreamed of joining a community of civilized worlds for generations. The Coalition represented everything humans aspired to become: peaceful cooperation between different species, shared knowledge and technology, mutual protection against threats like the Drak Empire. The Coalition had welcomed humanity with open arms after first contact. The Vortani shared their advanced energy technologies. The Threx provided detailed star charts and navigation data. The Nereids offered biological sciences and medical advances that could cure diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. In return, humans contributed their greatest asset, an unbreakable will to protect innocent life, where other species might calculate acceptable losses or strategic withdrawals. Humans would fight to the last ship to defend civilian populations. The coalition leadership had expressed amazement at this human characteristic, calling it both admirable and useful for maintaining order in dangerous frontier regions. "All ships report ready for hyperspace transition," the navigation officer announced. "Coalition fleet acknowledges our formation position." Through the viewports, Reeves could see the impressive sight of the combined task force. 67 coalition vessels from 4 different species, all united in purpose. The elegant Vortani cruisers looked like floating crystals, their hulls refracting starlight into beautiful rainbow patterns. The massive Threx hive ships resembled enormous insects, their organic-looking armor plating covering devastating weapon arrays. The sleek Nereid destroyers seemed to flow like liquid mercury, their hulls constantly shifting color and scattered throughout the formation. The angular human warships stood ready for battle. They lacked the artistic beauty of alien designs, but their practical, robust construction promised reliable performance when the shooting started. "Jump to hyperspace," Torres commanded from the fleet flagship. Space twisted around them as the task force entered the faster-than-light corridor that would carry them to Haven 7 for the next 36 hours. They would travel through the strange, parallel dimension that allowed interstellar travel. Then they would emerge in the Haven system, ready to face the Drak invasion force during the hyperspace journey. Reeves studied intelligence reports about Drak military tactics. The reptilian warriors favored overwhelming numerical superiority and brutal frontal assaults. They showed no concern for their own casualties, and often used suicide attacks to maximize damage to enemy formations. Their ships carried powerful weapons but possessed weak armor, making them vulnerable to focused fire from disciplined opponents. The plan seemed straightforward. The Coalition task force would emerge from hyperspace in a defensive formation around Haven 7. Human ships would engage the Drak battle line directly, using their superior training and coordination to offset the enemy's numerical advantage. Meanwhile, Vortani energy weapons would provide long-range support. Threx hive ships would coordinate fleet movements, and Nereid stealth vessels would attack Drak supply lines. "Approaching hyperspace exit point," the navigation officer reported. "All ships confirm ready status." Reeves took his position in the command chair as the Endurance prepared to return to normal space. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each officer focused on their assigned duties. These men and women represented the best of humanity, intelligent, brave, and completely dedicated to protecting innocent life throughout the galaxy. "Exit hyperspace now," Torres ordered. The universe snapped back into focus as 67 warships materialized near Haven 7 immediately. Sensor alarms began wailing as they detected the Drak invasion fleet. More than 200 enemy vessels swarmed around the colony world, their weapons already pounding the planetary defense stations. "All human ships form attack formation," Reeves commanded. "For Haven 7 for the Coalition for humanity." The battle for Haven 7 was about to begin. The plasma bolts lit up space around Haven 7 like deadly fireworks as the Coalition fleet engaged the Drak invasion force. Commander Hayes gripped her station aboard the Endurance, watching the tactical display as human ships pushed deep into enemy lines. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and both sides had taken heavy casualties. "Direct hit on the Drak command cruiser," reported Lieutenant Davis from the weapons station. "Their flagship is breaking apart." Through the chaos of battle, Hayes could see the elegant Vortani vessels maintaining their position at maximum weapons range, their crystal hulls glowing as they fired concentrated energy beams. The massive Threx hive ships floated in perfect geometric formations, their combined firepower creating devastating crossfire zones. The Nereid stealth ships flickered in and out of visibility as they struck at Drak supply vessels, but it was the human fleet that bore the heaviest fighting. Captain Reeves had led his ships directly into the heart of the Drac formation, engaging their most powerful vessels in close-range combat. The strategy was working. Despite being outnumbered, the coalition forces were slowly gaining the upper hand. Admiral Torres signals all ships, the communications officer announced. Human vessels are to advance on the Drac command station and eliminate their leadership. Coalition forces will provide covering fire. Hayes felt a surge of pride as she watched human ships respond to the order without hesitation. The U.S. Valiant, Defiant, and Resolute formed up alongside the Endurance, their hulls scarred by enemy fire but their weapons still functional. Behind them, 12 more human cruisers and 23 destroyers prepared for the final assault. "This is it," Reeves announced over the fleet communication channel. "We break their command structure and end this invasion. All ships follow the Endurance. Maximum acceleration toward the Drac station." The human fleet surged forward through the battle zone, their engines pushed to emergency power. Enemy fire intensified as the Drac forces realized the coalition's intention. Massive explosions erupted around the advancing human ships as Drac plasma cannons and missile batteries focused their fire on the approaching threat. The UHS Defiant took a direct hit from a Drac heavy cruiser, her hull cracking open like an eggshell. Emergency beacon signals flooded the communication channels as her crew abandoned ship. The U.S. Resolute lost her main engines to a coordinated missile strike, leaving her drifting helplessly as enemy fighters swarmed around her. "Sir, we're taking heavy casualties," Hayes reported as another human destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Should we request additional support from our coalition allies?" Reeves checked his tactical display, noting the positions of the Vortani, Threx, and Nereid vessels. They maintained their assigned positions, continuing to engage Drac forces at their preferred ranges. The plan called for maximum pressure on the enemy command station while the alien allies prevented Drac reinforcements from interfering. "Negative," Reeves replied. "We stay on mission. Signal the coalition fleet that we are beginning our final approach." The remaining human ships formed a tight formation around the Endurance as they closed the distance to the massive Drac command station. The enemy structure bristled with weapon emplacements and docking bays for hundreds of fighter craft. Destroying it would cripple Drac coordination and force their fleet to retreat. "Range to target, 12,000 kilometers in closing," Davis reported. "All weapons ready for concentrated bombardment." Hayes monitored the communication channels, waiting for confirmation that coalition forces were moving to support the human assault. The plan required precise timing. As soon as the human ships engaged the command station, the Vortani vessels would advance to provide heavy fire support while the Threx hive ships coordinated a general attack on the remaining Drac fleet. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual movement in the coalition formations," Lieutenant Rogers announced from the sensor station. "The Vortani ships they're moving away from the battle zone." Hayes quickly checked her own sensors, her blood running cold as she confirmed Rogers' report. The crystalline vessels that had been providing long-range support were indeed changing course, accelerating away from Haven 7 instead of advancing to support the human assault. "There must be some mistake," Hayes said, opening a communication channel to Admiral Krell's flagship. "Coalition Command, this is the Endurance. Please confirm your current maneuvering intentions." The reply came not from Admiral Krell, but from an unknown Vortani officer. "Human vessels, you are ordered to continue your current mission. Coalition forces are redeploying to prevent enemy reinforcements." Hayes felt something cold settle in her stomach as she studied the tactical display more carefully. The Threx hive ships were also changing formation, but not to attack the Drac fleet. Instead, they were moving into hyperspace jump positions. The Nereid stealth vessels had completely disappeared from sensors, which could mean they were either attacking enemy targets or had already fled the system. "Captain, something is wrong," Hayes said quietly, moving close to Reeves' command chair. "Our allies are abandoning their positions just as we commit to the final assault." Reeves looked at his tactical display with growing alarm. "The human fleet. was now completely isolated in the heart of the Drac formation, surrounded by enemy vessels on all sides. Worse, the Drac ships were no longer firing at the retreating coalition vessels. All enemy fire was now concentrated on the human fleet. "Get me Admiral Torres immediately," Reeves ordered. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures," Rogers reported, his voice tight with fear. "The coalition ships are jumping out of the system." On the main view screen, Hayes watched in horror as the elegant Vortani cruisers disappeared into hyperspace, followed moments later by the massive Threx Hive ships. Within minutes, the combined coalition fleet had vanished, leaving the human vessels alone against more than 100 Drac warships. "All human ships, this is Admiral Torres," came the emergency broadcast from the fleet flagship. "We have been abandoned by our allies. All vessels are to break off the attack immediately and attempt to reach minimum safe distance for hyperspace jump." But it was too late. The Drac forces had anticipated this moment, moving to surround the human fleet before they could escape. Plasma fire erupted from dozens of enemy ships as they closed the trap. The UHS Valiant exploded under concentrated fire from 3 Drac cruisers. The destroyer squadron tried to fight their way clear but found their escape routes blocked by enemy vessels. "We're trapped," Hayes said, watching as red enemy contacts appeared on all sides of their formation. "They planned this. The coalition set us up." Through the communication channels, Hayes could hear the desperate voices of human ship commanders calling for support that would never come. Captain Williams of the UHS Intrepid was screaming for covering fire as his ship's shields failed. Commander Thompson of the destroyer U.S. Lightning reported massive hull breaches before his signal went silent. "Emergency hyperspace jump," Reeves ordered. "All ships, scatter formation and jump to any safe coordinates." The Endurance's hyperdrive engaged just as a massive Drac missile barrage reached their position. Space twisted around them as they escaped into the safety of hyperspace, but Hayes knew that most of the human fleet would not be so lucky as the ship traveled through the hyperspace corridor toward home. Hayes accessed the long-range communication array and began monitoring emergency frequencies. Slowly, scattered reports began arriving from the few human vessels that had managed to escape the massacre. Out of 43 human ships that had entered the Haven 7 system, only 7 had survived to make hyperspace jumps. The rest had been destroyed in the trap that their coalition allies had helped to spring. Admiral Torres was among the dead, his flagship vaporized by concentrated Drac fire as he tried to organize a fighting retreat. "Why?" Hayes asked quietly, staring at the tactical replay of the battle. "Why would they abandon us?" Captain Reeves studied the same data, his face grim as he began to understand the true scope of what had happened. The coalition had not simply abandoned their human allies in a moment of cowardice. The precise timing, the coordinated withdrawal, the way Drac forces had been positioned to trap the human fleet, it all pointed to something far worse than battlefield panic. "Because," Reeves said slowly, "this was never about saving Haven 7. This was about eliminating humanity from the coalition. They used us as bait to destroy both us and the Drac fleet in one battle." Hayes felt the foundations of everything she believed about galactic civilization crumble as the truth became clear. Humanity had not been welcomed into the coalition as equals and allies. They had been recruited as expendable soldiers, useful only until they became inconvenient. The betrayal was complete, calculated, and utterly ruthless. And now the survivors had to carry this terrible knowledge back to Earth, where humanity would have to decide how to respond to the species that had murdered thousands of their finest warriors through treachery and lies. The emergency session of the Human Council convened in the deepest levels of Earth's military command center, 3 kilometers beneath the surface of the Australian continent. President Garcia sat at the head of the oval table, her face showing the strain of 72 hours without sleep since the survivors of Haven 7 had returned with their devastating report. Around the table sat the most powerful leaders of human civilization. General Cross represented the military forces. Director Watson led the scientific community. Admiral Park commanded what remained of the human fleet. Intelligence Chief Morgan had spent the past 3 days analyzing classified data that painted an even darker picture of coalition treachery. "The evidence is undeniable," Morgan said, activating the holographic display that filled the center of the table. "For the past 6 months, coalition forces have been feeding detailed intelligence about human military capabilities directly to Drac command structures. Ship specifications, tactical doctrines, defensive positions, everything." The display showed intercepted communication logs that human intelligence had decoded using captured coalition encryption keys. Message after message revealed the scope of the conspiracy. The Vortani had provided detailed analysis of human weapons technology to Drac scientists. The Threx had shared human fleet movement patterns with enemy strategists. The Nereids had mapped human colony locations and defensive capabilities. "They have been planning our destruction since the moment we made first contact," Watson added, her voice filled with barely controlled rage. "Initial xenobiological surveys, cultural assessments, psychological profiles. It was all preparation for finding the most efficient way to eliminate humanity as a threat to their established order." President Garcia studied the data with growing horror. The scale of the betrayal went far beyond the massacre at Haven 7. Every interaction between humanity and the coalition had been calculated to gather intelligence while positioning human forces for maximum vulnerability when the trap was finally sprung. "What about the Drac Empire?" General Cross asked. "Were they willing participants in this conspiracy?" Morgan brought up additional files showing financial records and resource transfers. "The coalition has been secretly supplying the Drac with advanced weapons and strategic intelligence for over 2 years. In return, the Drac agreed to focus their attacks on human positions while leaving coalition worlds untouched. Haven 7 was meant to be the final solution, a battle that would eliminate both humanity and weaken the Drac enough that coalition forces could easily mop up the survivors." The room fell silent as the full implications became clear. The coalition had not simply abandoned their human allies in battle. They had orchestrated a complex deception designed to eliminate humanity entirely while solving their long-standing conflict with the Drac Empire. It was genocide disguised as military strategy. "Why?" President Garcia asked quietly. "What did they have to fear from us?" Watson activated another series of displays showing comparative analysis between human and coalition societies. "We represented everything they could not control. Our cultural values of individual initiative, technological innovation, and protective loyalty toward weaker species threatened the stable hierarchy they had maintained for centuries." The data painted a picture of galactic civilization that humanity had completely misunderstood. The coalition was not a voluntary alliance of equal species working together for mutual benefit. It was a carefully structured pyramid of power where each species occupied a specific role designed to maintain stability and prevent any group from challenging the established order. The Vortani controlled energy technology and served as the intellectual leadership caste. The Threx provided coordination and manufacturing through their hive mind structure. The Nereids handled biological sciences and environmental management. Dozens of other species filled specialized roles as miners, farmers, transport workers, or security forces. Humanity did not fit into their system, Watson continued. "We showed too much independence, too much creativity, too much willingness to sacrifice for others regardless of species. They feared that our influence would inspire other coalition members to demand changes in the existing power structure." Admiral Park leaned forward, studying the military analysis. "So they decided to eliminate the problem before it could spread. Use us to solve their Drac situation, then claim we died heroically in battle against the Empire. The perfect solution from their perspective," Morgan agreed. "They eliminate a potential threat to their authority while gaining public sympathy for the tragic loss of their brave human allies. Meanwhile, they acquire human technology and colony worlds to distribute among their loyal species." President Garcia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of leadership crushing down on her shoulders. In 3 days, everything humanity believed about their place in galactic civilization had been revealed as lies. They were not the newest members of a peaceful alliance. They were unwanted intruders marked for extinction by species that saw them as threats to the established order. What are our options? She asked quietly. General Cross consulted his tactical assessment. Militarily, we are in a desperate position. We lost most of our experienced fleet commanders at Haven 7. Our remaining forces are scattered across dozens of colonies with no coordinated defense plan. If the coalition decides to finish what they started, we cannot stop them. Unless we change the rules of engagement, Admiral Park said grimly. The coalition expects us to fight like honorable soldiers following established military conventions. They have spent months analyzing our tactical doctrines and combat behaviors. But those analyses are based on how we fought as their allies, not how we might fight as their enemies. Watson brought up her research into human biological and psychological advantages. Our species possesses several characteristics that coalition analysts have consistently underestimated. We adapt to new situations faster than any known species. We can operate effectively both as individuals and as coordinated groups. Most importantly, we have a capacity for both cooperation and competition that allows us to rapidly modify our strategies based on changing circumstances. The display showed comparative data on learning rates, technological development, and social organization. In every category, humans showed greater flexibility and adaptation speed than their coalition counterparts. The aliens had evolved for specific environmental niches and social roles. Humans had evolved to survive in any environment and fill any necessary role. They studied how we fight their wars, President Garcia said slowly, beginning to understand the implications. But they never studied how we fight our own wars. Morgan nodded grimly. Human military history shows a consistent pattern of rapid tactical evolution, innovative weapons development, and strategic thinking that prioritizes results over conventional approaches. When human survival is at stake, we do not limit ourselves to honorable or traditional methods. The room fell silent again as the leaders of humanity contemplated what this meant. For 6 months, they had fought as members of the coalition, following alien rules of engagement and tactical doctrines that emphasized their role as expendable shock troops. They had been honorable allies, trustworthy partners, and reliable defenders of coalition interests, but the coalition had made a fatal miscalculation. They had assumed that human behavior during peacetime cooperation would remain constant during a war for survival. They had analyzed humanity as soldiers fighting someone else's battles, not as a species fighting for its very existence. If we are going to survive, President Garcia said finally, we need to become something the coalition never studied. We need to stop being their former allies and start being their worst nightmare. General Cross pulled up strategic maps showing coalition territory, resource distribution, and military positions. We know their fleet dispositions, their supply lines, their colony locations, and their technological capabilities. 6 months of alliance gave us complete intelligence about their military and civilian infrastructure, and they gave us access to their computer networks, communication protocols, and navigation databases, Morgan added. We have security codes, encryption keys, and administrative access to systems throughout coalition space. Watson smiled coldly as she realized the full scope of their opportunity. They spent months positioning us as the perfect weapon against the Drac Empire. But weapons can be turned against their wielders if you understand how they function. President Garcia looked around the table at her advisors, seeing determination replacing despair in their faces. The coalition had made humanity into warriors by necessity and provided them with all the tools needed to wage war by their betrayal. They had created their own destruction by underestimating what humans would become when their survival was threatened. Then, we give them exactly what they created, she said quietly. But not the weapon they thought they were making. We become the weapon they should have feared to create. The transformation of human civilization began that day, deep beneath the Earth's surface, as leaders who had once sought peaceful cooperation with galactic neighbors began planning the systematic destruction of the species that had betrayed them. The asteroid mining facility at Kepler 186 had operated peacefully for 37 years, providing rare metals to coalition worlds throughout the sector. The Vortani supervisors and Threx workers had established efficient routines that maximized production while maintaining acceptable safety standards. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for what emerged from hyperspace on a cold Tuesday morning 2 years after Haven 7. The human ships appeared without warning, their hulls painted matte black to reduce sensor visibility. Unlike the bright, angular vessels that had once fought alongside coalition forces, these new designs looked predatory and efficient. The Nemesis led a squadron of 12 destroyers, each one equipped with weapon systems that coalition intelligence had never seen before. Colonel Mitchell stood in the command center of the Nemesis, watching as his tactical teams prepared for the assault. The soft-spoken mining supervisors were broadcasting surrender offers and requesting clarification of human intentions. Their confusion was understandable. According to Coalition records, humanity had been extinct for 2 years, wiped out in the heroic Battle of Haven 7. Target their communication arrays first, Mitchell ordered. I want complete communication blackout before they can report our presence. Then disable their defensive systems and prepare boarding parties. The attack lasted 18 minutes. Human assault teams moved through the facility with practiced efficiency, stunning Vortani supervisors and herding Threx workers into secure holding areas. The mining operation's valuable equipment was systematically cataloged and prepared for transport to human vessels, but Mitchell was not interested in the mining equipment. His real target sat in the facility's central computer core, complete production records, shipping schedules, and distribution networks for 12 different star systems. More importantly, the database contained detailed information about coalition, military supply chains, and manufacturing capabilities. Download everything, Mitchell told his intelligence specialist, Commander Blake. Production quotas, delivery schedules, personnel records, maintenance logs, every bit of data in their system. Blake worked rapidly at the terminal, her portable equipment interfacing directly with Vortani computer systems. Sir, this facility supplies armor plating for 60% of Coalition heavy cruisers. If we shut down production here, their fleet maintenance will be crippled within 6 months. Mitchell smiled grimly as he watched Vortani and Threx prisoners being loaded onto transport ships. These beings had participated in the conspiracy that murdered thousands of humans at Haven 7. Some had directly provided intelligence to enemy forces. Others had simply remained silent while genocide was planned and executed. Set demolition charges throughout the facility, he ordered. I want this place reduced to space dust. And prepare the prisoners for interrogation. They are going to tell us everything they know about Coalition military operations. The Kepler 186 attack was one of dozens occurring simultaneously throughout Coalition space. Human strike forces had emerged from 2 years of careful preparation to begin systematic destruction of alien infrastructure. Mining facilities, research stations, communication relays, and supply depots disappeared in coordinated attacks that left Coalition leadership scrambling to understand the scope of the threat. Admiral Park coordinated the campaign from her flagship, the HS Retribution, a massive battleship constructed in secret using technology reverse-engineered from captured Coalition vessels. The ship represented everything humanity had learned about combining human innovation with alien engineering. It was faster than Threx hive ships, more heavily armed than Vortani cruisers, and equipped with stealth systems that surpassed Nereid capabilities. Status report from all strike groups. Park requested from her operations center. The reports painted a picture of devastating success. Strike Group Alpha had eliminated 3 Vortani research facilities and captured their entire scientific staff. Strike Group Beta had destroyed the primary Threx manufacturing complex at Vol 359, disrupting production of military components for the entire sector. Strike Group Gamma had infiltrated Nereid communication networks and implanted computer viruses that would activate during future military operations, but the most important success belonged to Strike Group Delta. led by Captain Reeves aboard his rebuilt flagship, the Endurance. His target had been the Coalition Intelligence Center at Procyon 4, where alien analysts had spent years studying human capabilities and planning their destruction. "We secured the entire intelligence archive," Reeves reported. "Complete files on every species in Coalition space, including psychological profiles, military assessments, and detailed information about internal political tensions, plus the names and locations of every individual involved in planning the Haven 7 operation." Park felt a cold satisfaction as she reviewed the captured intelligence data. The Coalition had been so confident in their success that they had preserved detailed records of their conspiracy against humanity. Personnel files showed exactly which officials had proposed using humans as expendable shock troops. Communication logs revealed who had suggested feeding human intelligence to the Drac Empire. Financial records documented payments made to ensure human forces would be positioned for maximum vulnerability. "Begin Phase 2 operations," Park ordered. "All strike groups are authorized to proceed with targeted elimination protocols." Phase 2 represented a fundamental shift from destroying Coalition infrastructure to eliminating Coalition leadership. Human assault teams had spent months studying the captured intelligence files, identifying key officials responsible for the Haven 7 betrayal. Now they would methodically hunt down and eliminate these individuals. Regardless of their current location or security arrangements, the Vortani Admiral Krell, who had personally coordinated the withdrawal of Coalition forces during the Haven 7 battle, died when human infiltrators poisoned his energy-based nutrition system. The Threx Queen Mother, who had authorized intelligence sharing with the Drac Empire, was assassinated when her hive ship suffered a catastrophic reactor explosion. The Nereid Council leader, who had proposed using humanity as bait for eliminating the Drac threat, was found dead in her private chambers, apparently killed by a toxin that affected only her specific genetic markers, within 3 months. Every major architect of the Haven 7 conspiracy had been eliminated. But human operations did not stop with revenge killings. Intelligence analysis had revealed that Coalition society was far more fragile than it appeared. The careful hierarchy of species roles and controlled power distribution that had maintained stability for centuries depended on specific individuals maintaining their positions and following established protocols by eliminating key leadership figures and disrupting critical supply chains. Human forces were causing cascading failures throughout Coalition civilization. Species that had never questioned their assigned roles were suddenly forced to make independent decisions. Worlds that had relied on predictable resource deliveries found themselves facing shortages and rationing. Military units accustomed to coordinated operations from centralized command structures struggled to respond effectively to distributed human attacks. "The Threx are requesting emergency negotiation," Commander Hayes reported from her position as intelligence liaison. "Their remaining Queen Mothers want to discuss terms for ending hostilities." Park studied the strategic situation displayed on her command screens. Human forces controlled key resource systems throughout Coalition space. Alien military units were scattered and demoralized by the loss of their command structure. Most importantly, several Coalition species were beginning to question whether their previous leadership had made the right decision in betraying humanity. "Inform the Threx that we will accept their surrender," Park replied. "But make it clear that surrender means complete submission to human authority. They will provide reparations for their role in the Haven 7 massacre, and they will serve human interests going forward." Similar messages were being sent to other Coalition species as human forces consolidated their conquests. The rapid collapse of alien resistance had exceeded even the most optimistic human projections. It turned out that a civilization built on rigid hierarchy and specialized roles was extremely vulnerable to attacks that disrupted command structures and supply systems. But Park knew that military victory was only the beginning. The real challenge would be transforming the scattered Coalition territories into a stable empire under human rule. Unlike the aliens, who had evolved for specific roles within their society, humans would need to adapt to governing dozens of different species across hundreds of worlds. Fortunately, adaptation was something humans excelled at, and they had learned important lessons about trust, loyalty, and the consequences of betrayal from their former coalition allies. The new galactic order would be built on very different principles than the one it replaced. Human principles. Human rules. And absolutely no tolerance for those who might consider treachery as a viable strategy for dealing with their new masters. The throne room of New Terra stretched across an entire deck of the massive orbital station that now served as the capital of the human dominion. 5 years had passed since the last coalition stronghold had fallen, and Emperor Garcia sat upon a chair carved from the crystalline remains of the Vortani homeworld. Reviewing reports from across her galactic empire, General Cross approached the throne with measured steps, her uniform bearing the insignia of Supreme Military Commander for the Outer Territories. Behind her walked a delegation of alien representatives, their postures displaying the careful deference that had become standard protocol when appearing before human authority. "Your Majesty," Cross said, offering a respectful bow, "the tribute delegations from Sectors 7 through 12 have arrived for the annual accounting." Garcia studied the assembled aliens with the cold assessment that had made her the most feared ruler in galactic history. The Threx delegation stood in perfect formation, their insectoid features displaying the nervous twitching that indicated stress within their hive mind structure. The Nereid representatives kept their aquatic suits at optimal humidity while avoiding direct eye contact with their human overlords. The few surviving Vortani flickered with dim crystalline light, their once proud energy patterns now subdued and submissive. "Proceed with the reports," Garcia commanded, her voice carrying the absolute authority that came from controlling the fate of billions. Across hundreds of worlds, the Threx speaker stepped forward first, her translation device conveying the careful tone of complete submission. "Your Majesty, the mining operations in our home systems have exceeded production quotas by 12% this year. All rare metal shipments have been delivered to human military facilities on schedule. The worker drones have maintained perfect efficiency ratings." Garcia nodded curtly. The Threx had adapted well to their new role as the primary industrial workforce for the human dominion. Their hive mind coordination made them ideal for large-scale manufacturing and resource extraction. More importantly, their queen mothers had learned to value survival over pride after watching their most defiant leaders executed in public ceremonies. "And the Nereid territories?" Garcia asked, turning her attention to the aquatic delegation. The lead Nereid activated her suit's external speakers with visible reluctance. "Your Majesty, our biological research programs have produced 17 new medical treatments for human colonists. Our ocean worlds now host 43 human underwater cities, with construction proceeding ahead of schedule. Fish and kelp production has increased 30% to meet the nutritional requirements of your expanding population. The transformation of galactic civilization had been swift and absolute. Within 2 years of the Coalition's collapse, human administrators had reorganized alien societies to serve the needs of their new masters. Species that had once occupied positions of authority were reduced to specialized labor forces. Worlds that had been centers of political power became resource extraction sites or agricultural colonies, but Garcia had learned valuable lessons from the Coalition's mistakes. Instead of maintaining the rigid hierarchy that had made the old system vulnerable to disruption, she had created a more flexible structure that adapted to changing circumstances while ensuring human dominance remained absolute. "Commander Morgan," Garcia called to her intelligence chief, who stood beside the throne monitoring the proceedings. "What is the status of our expansion into the former Drac territories?" Morgan consulted her datapad with practiced efficiency. "Your Majesty, the campaign against the remaining Drac remnants is proceeding successfully. Admiral Reeves reports that the last enemy stronghold will fall within 6 months. We have identified 7 habitable worlds suitable for human colonization, plus extensive asteroid mining opportunities." The destruction of the Drac Empire had taken longer than anticipated, but the results were worth the effort. Unlike the coalition species, who had been betrayers but were still capable of useful labor, the Drac had proven completely incapable of accepting human authority. They fought to the death rather than surrender, making extermination the only practical solution. Garcia turned her attention to the newest member of the delegation, a tall humanoid figure with pale blue skin and large black eyes. The Altarian represented one of 15 species that had been discovered in territories beyond the former coalition borders. Unlike the conquered coalition races, these newly contacted civilizations had been given a choice: immediate submission to human authority or systematic destruction of their homeworlds. And what news from the Altarian Federation? Garcia asked with deceptive calm. The alien ambassador trembled slightly as he spoke. Your Majesty, our government has voted to accept full integration into the human dominion. All military forces will be disbanded and turned over to your commanders. Our industrial capacity will be converted to produce goods according to human specifications. Our people await assignment of their roles in your empire. Garcia smiled with cold satisfaction. The Altarian Federation had witnessed the fate of the coalition and learned the correct lesson. Resistance was futile, cooperation ensured survival. Opposition resulted in extinction. It was a simple formula that more species were learning to appreciate as human influence spread across the galaxy. Commander Blake, Garcia called to her planetary administration chief, what is the current population status of human space? Blake activated her holographic display, showing demographic data from across the Dominion. Your Majesty, human population has reached 400 billion across 637 worlds. Birth rates remain high due to the abundant resources available from our subject territories. Our newest generation is being educated specifically for roles in galactic administration and military command. The numbers represented humanity's greatest triumph. 5 years ago, humans had numbered fewer than 50 billion souls scattered across a few dozen colonial worlds. Now they ruled an empire that spanned thousands of star systems and controlled the fate of countless alien species. Human cities rose on worlds that had once been centers of coalition power. Human children learned to command alien servants, who had once plotted humanity's destruction, but Garcia knew that maintaining control over such a vast empire required constant vigilance and occasional displays of force. The subject species needed regular reminders of what happened to those who forgot their place in the new order. General Cross, she said, I want you to select one system from each sector for surprise inspection. Any signs of reduced efficiency, unauthorized communication, or political organization should be dealt with immediately and publicly. Cross nodded grimly. Yes, Your Majesty. Shall I prepare the standard response protocols? Use the Procyon 7 model, Garcia replied, referring to a previous inspection that had resulted in the complete sterilization of a Vortani colony world. That had shown signs of attempting to organize resistance movements. Make sure the recordings are distributed to all subject territories so they understand the consequences of disloyalty. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably at this reminder of human ruthlessness. During the first years after the coalition's collapse, several species had attempted to regain their independence through secret alliances or coordinated uprisings. Each attempt had been discovered through human intelligence networks and crushed with overwhelming force that left no doubt about the futility of resistance. Garcia rose from her crystalline throne and walked to the massive viewport that dominated one wall of the throne room. Beyond the transparent aluminum, she could see the sprawling orbital shipyards where human engineers supervised alien workers, constructing the next generation of Dominion warships. Sleek vessels designed for long-range exploration and conquest took shape under the guidance of human architects who had learned to combine the best technologies from dozens of conquered species. 50 years ago, she said quietly, addressing both her human commanders and the alien delegates, humanity dreamed of joining a peaceful community of civilized worlds. We sought cooperation, mutual respect, and shared prosperity among the stars. The throne room fell silent as Garcia continued her speech, her words carrying across the chamber with absolute authority. Our former coalition allies taught us valuable Lessons about the true nature of galactic civilization. They showed us that trust is weakness, that cooperation is merely a tool for exploitation, and that survival requires the elimination of potential threats before they can act. She turned back to face the assembled delegates, her expression cold and implacable. We have learned those lessons well, perhaps too well. The galaxy is now ours not because we sought conquest, but because you made it necessary for our survival. Every world we rule, every species we command, every life we control exists because the coalition chose betrayal over honor. General Cross stepped forward slightly. Your Majesty, if I may ask, do you ever regret what we have become? Garcia considered the question carefully, looking out at her vast empire while remembering the idealistic humans who had once believed in galactic brotherhood and peaceful cooperation among different species. Regret is a luxury we cannot afford, she said finally. We are what the universe made us. We are monsters, perhaps, but we are monsters who keep our promises to those who serve faithfully and monsters who ensure that betrayal like ours never happens again. She returned to her throne, settling into the crystalline seat that had once belonged to the being who orchestrated humanity's intended destruction. The galaxy needed rulers who understood that power must be absolute to be effective, that loyalty must be enforced to be reliable, and that trust must be earned through demonstrated submission rather than promised through empty words. The alien delegates bowed deeply, acknowledging their complete acceptance of human authority and their species' eternal subordination to their conquerors. Sometimes, Garcia concluded, monsters are exactly what the universe needs, and we have proven ourselves to be very effective monsters indeed. The session ended with the aliens departing to carry news of human strength and resolve back to their homeworlds, while human commanders began planning the next phase of expansion into unexplored regions of the galaxy. The human dominion would continue to grow, spreading across the stars under the absolute rule of the species that had transformed betrayal into the foundation of galactic order.